Alexander was born in the year 356, before the Common Era, in the city of Pella, Macedonia, into a world of blood and ambition. His father, King Philip II, was a ruthless strategist who dreamed of conquering Greece. His mother, Olympias, was fierce and deeply religious. She told her son he was descended from Achilles and fathered by Zeus. As a child, Alexander tamed a wild horse named Bucephalus, the only one brave enough to ride it. His father said, "Macedonia is too small for you." At 13, he was sent to study under Aristotle. He absorbed knowledge of philosophy, warfare, medicine, and the epic tales of Homer. Alexander slept with a copy of the Iliad under his pillow. Achilles became his role model, a warrior who sought glory above all. By 16, Alexander was left to rule Macedonia as regent, while Philip campaigned elsewhere. He crushed a Thracian revolt and founded a city in his name. At 18, he fought beside his father at the Battle of Chaeronea. He led the left wing and shattered the sacred band of Thebes. In 336 BC, Philip was assassinated at a royal wedding. Alexander seized the throne immediately, eliminating rivals before they could act. The Greek city-states saw an opportunity to break free. Alexander marched south and razed Thebes to the ground, killing thousands and enslaving the rest. With Greece secured, he declared war on Persia. It was a bold move. The Persians had the largest empire on earth. In 334 BC, he crossed the Hellespont into Asia. He visited the supposed site of Troy and paid tribute to Achilles at his tomb. At the Battle of the Granicus River, he led a charge across the water against Persian forces. His men urged caution, but he wanted victory through boldness. The Persians fell back in chaos, and Alexander claimed his first major victory. He spared captured Greek mercenaries, but executed their Persian officers. He moved through Asia Minor, liberating Greek cities and gaining allies. His army grew stronger with every town he took. At Gordium, he faced the legendary Gordian knot. Rather than solve it, he cut it in half with his sword, fulfilling the prophecy in his own way. Meanwhile, Darius III prepared a massive army to crush him. The two armies met near Issus, where the terrain favored Alexander's smaller force. Alexander's cavalry slammed into the Persian center. Darius fled the battlefield, leaving his mother, wife, and children behind. Instead of abusing his victory, Alexander treated the captured women with honor. Word spread that this young king was unlike any other. He turned south toward Egypt, conquering coastal cities along the way. Tyre resisted, so Alexander built a causeway to reach it. The siege of Tyre lasted 7 months. When the city finally fell, he slaughtered 8,000 men and sold 30,000 into slavery. Arriving in Egypt, he was welcomed as a liberator. He founded the city of Alexandria, destined to become a center of learning and trade. At the Oracle of Siwa, deep in the desert, priests declared him the son of Zeus Ammon. The prophecy confirmed his divine right to rule. Alexander still had much more to accomplish. He marched to meet Darius again, this time at Gaugamela. The Persians outnumbered him 5-1. With brilliant tactics, he broke through the Persian lines and went straight for Darius. Once again, the Persian king fled. Alexander marched into Babylon and was crowned King of Kings. The treasures of the empire were his. He moved through Susa and into Persepolis, the ceremonial capital. There, in a drunken frenzy, he set the palace ablaze. Some said it was revenge for Persia's burning of Athens a century earlier. Others said it was madness. Alexander now ruled the largest empire in history, but he wasn't finished. He wanted to push east, to the edges of the known world. In Bactria, he fought brutal guerrilla campaigns in freezing mountains. He took a local wife, Roxana, to help secure his hold. But trouble brewed among his men. They were weary, cold, and homesick, and didn't like seeing Alexander adopt Persian customs. He began dressing like a Persian king and demanded to be worshipped as a god. Many saw this as betrayal. Some plotted against him. His closest friend Clytus criticized him drunkenly, and Alexander killed him in rage. Haunted by the murder, Alexander fell into deep despair. He isolated himself more and more. He marched into India, facing King Porus and his war elephants at the Battle of the Hydaspes. It was one of his bloodiest battles. The river swelled from heavy rains, and the elephants caused chaos. But Alexander's tactics won the day. Porus was captured, but impressed him so much that Alexander let him keep his kingdom. It was a rare moment of respect. His men, exhausted and fearful, refused to go any farther east. After 8 years of campaigning, they demanded to return home. Alexander reluctantly agreed. The journey back through the Gedrosian desert was catastrophic. Heat and thirst killed thousands. His army limped back to Babylon, broken but victorious.
Alexander began planning new conquests: Arabia, North Africa, even Rome. He dreamed of a single world empire.
Like most of us in our short lives, he did not get to finish all he set out for. He fell ill after a banquet. 10 days later, he was dead. He was only 32. The cause of death remains one of history's great mysteries. He left no legitimate heir. His generals, the Diadochi, divided his empire and descended into war. Yet his legacy endured. Over 20 cities bore his name, the greatest of them Alexandria. Greek became the language of science, philosophy, and trade from Egypt to India. This era became known as the Hellenistic Age. In some places he was remembered as a god, in others a tyrant. But in every corner of the known world, people remembered his name, Alexander the Great. He conquered more than just land. He conquered time. Hit that like button if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to see more. Share to support the channel. Thank you for stopping by. Knowing things is power.
This is a true story. They laughed when he first joined. A baboon in uniform. But Corporal Jack was no joke. He served in the South African Army during the Boer War. Not as a mascot, as a soldier. He marched in formation, saluted officers, and when gunfire broke out, he built his own shelter to survive. No one taught him. He just knew. Jack operated railway signals. He spotted enemies before humans did, and he never missed a shift. One day in battle, he was shot in the leg. He didn't cry out. He didn't run. He stood his ground. They gave him a pension, a real one. They promoted him to corporal. And when he died, they honored him as of their own. A monkey, yes, but a soldier first. Loyal, brave, respected. Corporal Jack, a name worth remembering. Because sometimes, the most human soul isn't human at all. Knowledge is power. Hit that like button if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to see future videos. Thank you for stopping by.
Before borders or bullets, this land thrived under the care of its First Nations. Over 500 tribes with more than 300 languages lived across the continent. From the towering pines of the Pacific Northwest to the sun-scorched mesas of the Southwest. Peace wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. It was a world of sacred rivers, sky dances, buffalo migrations, and unwritten laws held in honor. A civilization far older than the nation that would come to claim it. Then came ships, steel, and handshakes laced with betrayal. Treaties were offered with smiles and signed with lies, written in ink that faded when convenient. The colonists came preaching peace and brotherhood until they came with guns. What began with trade turned to bloodshed. The government carved up the land not with permission, but with force. And when paper wasn't enough, they used fire and fear to finish the job. In 1864, the Sand Creek Massacre shocked even hardened warriors. Cheyenne women and children were slaughtered as they waved white flags under a U.S. military promise of peace. It was called a victory by the newspapers. A cleansing. But to those who watched their families die, it was something else. The first death knell of 1,000 broken promises. The ghost dance came later, a desperate prayer, a sacred ritual meant to bring back the ancestors and return the land to balance. But Washington feared the rhythm of those drums. In 1890, at Wounded Knee, they answered with bullets instead of understanding. More than 250 Lakota were gunned down. The dead included women, children, and old men. Their bodies frozen in the snow were the final images of a century-long betrayal. And yet, even within confinement, love endured. Behind barbed wire and broken promises, a Sioux warrior fell in love with an Apache girl, a bond that defied tradition, distance, and the U.S. government's attempt to divide. Their love was rebellion. Their child, a silent protest against extinction. Then came the schools. Carlisle, Haskell, Calaco, kill the Indian, save the man, they said. Generations of native children were stripped of their names, their languages, their hair, and their souls. What genocide could not finish, forced assimilation tried to erase. These schools were not places of learning. They were graveyards for identity. Still, the warrior spirit refused to die. In 1876, Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse led the Lakota and Cheyenne to victory at the Battle of Little Bighorn. General Custer fell, along with his arrogance. It was not just a battle. It was the last thunderclap of resistance in a storm that had raged for centuries. The government never forgave the tribes for winning that day. The history books rarely remember it. And what of the women? Buffalo Calf Road woman who knocked Custer from his horse. Lozen, who rode with her brother Victorio and could predict the enemy's movements in dreams. Pine Leaf, a warrior who refused to marry, leading men into battle and earning more than 20 warriors' feathers. These were not women behind men, they were the thunder before the storm. From sea to stolen sea, tribal lands vanished on paper. Signatures forced by starvation, deceit, and the barrel of a gun erased over 86 million acres. Maps were redrawn, rivers renamed, cultures pushed underground. But they were never gone. They are still here. Still dancing, still speaking their tongues. Still passing on songs, stories, and scars. They are not relics. They are not folklore. They are not history. They are the heartbeat of this land. Subscribe to our channel for more truth. More beauty. More history they tried to bury. This is only the beginning. China's story begins over 5,000 years ago along the Yellow River. The Xia, Shang, and Zhou dynasties laid the roots of civilization with bronze tools, ancestor worship, and written characters. They believed rulers held a divine right called the Mandate of Heaven. It could be revoked through corruption or failure. The Zhou dynasty saw the birth of Confucianism and Taoism. These philosophies still influence Chinese society today. The Qin dynasty rose through violence and unity. Emperor Qin Shi Huang conquered rival states, burned books, and buried scholars alive. He forced millions to build roads, canals, and the first Great Wall. His tomb still holds the silent army of terracotta warriors. The Han Dynasty brought stability, expansion, and glory. Silk flowed west to Rome, paper was invented, and Confucianism became law. Yet rebellion and famine eventually ended the Han's golden age. China shattered into chaos once again. The Three Kingdoms period followed and became legendary in Chinese folklore. It was a time of endless war and heroic generals. The Tang Dynasty became a cultural superpower. Poetry and cosmopolitanism thrived as China reached new heights. China's capital, Chang'an, became one of the largest and most advanced cities on Earth. Foreign traders and scholars came from across Asia and the Middle East. The Song Dynasty followed with inventions like gunpowder and printing presses. They created the first government-issued paper money in history. Their navy was advanced and powerful, but political weakness invited invasion. In the 1200s, the Mongols stormed across the steppes. Genghis Khan's grandson, Kublai Khan, conquered China and founded the Yuan dynasty. Trade expanded across Asia and Europe, but Mongol rule brought heavy taxes and deep resentment. The Ming dynasty rose in rebellion and restored Chinese rule. They rebuilt the Great Wall and sent Admiral Zheng He's fleets across the oceans. His ships reached India, Arabia, and East Africa. They were larger than any European fleet at the time. Then they turned inward out of fear of foreign influence. Isolation and corruption weakened the state from within. The Qing dynasty emerged from Manchuria and conquered Beijing. They expanded China to its greatest size, including Tibet, Xinjiang, Mongolia, and Taiwan. The empire ruled over many ethnic groups. Han Chinese, Manchus, Mongols, Tibetans, and Muslims all lived under Qing control. By the 1800s, the empire stagnated. The West forced China open through war and opium. The Opium Wars with Britain shattered Chinese sovereignty. Western powers carved spheres of influence and took Hong Kong. Millions became addicted to British opium. The Chinese emperor's pleas were ignored. The Qing tried to reform but failed. The Boxer Rebellion was crushed by foreign armies. In 1911, revolution ended 2,000 years of imperial rule. The Republic of China was declared under Sun Yat-sen. But democracy collapsed into warlord chaos. Out of this storm emerged the nationalists and the communists. Japan invaded China in the 1930s. The Nanjing massacre left hundreds of thousands dead. Civilians were slaughtered and women were raped. Entire districts were destroyed. Nationalists and communists briefly united to fight Japan, but once the war ended, civil war resumed. In 1949, Mao Zedong's communists seized Beijing. Chiang Kai-shek and the nationalists fled to Taiwan. Two Chinas were born. Both claimed to be the real government. Mao launched the Great Leap Forward to modernize agriculture and industry. Instead, it caused the deadliest famine in human history. Up to 45 million people starved to death. Some villages turned to cannibalism in desperation. To tighten control, Mao unleashed the Cultural Revolution. Red Guards destroyed temples and turned children against teachers and parents. Universities closed for years. Ancient knowledge was lost or rewritten. Mao died in 1976, and Deng Xiaoping took power. He opened the economy while keeping the Communist Party in control. Factories boomed and poverty dropped. China's coastal cities became engines of growth. But political freedom never arrived. The party's grip remained firm. In 1989, students filled Tiananmen Square demanding democracy. For days, they protested peacefully beneath a statue of the goddess of democracy. Then the tanks came. Soldiers opened fire on the crowds. The true death toll is unknown. One man stood before a tank and became a symbol around the world. Inside China, the massacre is erased. Searching Tiananmen or Tank Man is blocked. China's digital firewall bans Google, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. The state monitors every post and every phone. Millions use government-run apps that track movement and conversations. Social credit scores affect travel and employment. Meanwhile, Taiwan flourished into a thriving democracy. It holds elections, issues passports, and controls its own military. China still claims Taiwan as a breakaway province. It vows to retake the island by force if necessary. In the South China Sea, China built military bases on artificial islands. It claimed almost the entire region using the 9-dash line. International courts ruled the claim invalid. China refused to back down. Its ships confront Vietnamese and Filipino vessels regularly. Tensions with the United States continue to rise. In Xinjiang, over 1 million Uyghur Muslims have been detained. Reports describe forced labor, brainwashing, and sterilization. Mosques have been demolished. Children are separated from families and sent to state-run boarding schools. The government calls it counterterrorism. Critics call it cultural genocide. Tibet remains under tight control. The Dalai Lama lives in exile and protests are brutally crushed. Religious practices are tightly monitored. Foreign journalists are rarely allowed in. In Hong Kong, protests erupted in 2019 against a new extradition law. China responded with mass arrests and national security crackdowns. Pro-democracy activists have been silenced or exiled. Newspapers have been shut down or censored. The one country, two systems promise is gone. Hong Kong's freedoms are fading fast. Despite controversy, China is rising fast. It leads in AI infrastructure and global influence. The Belt and Road Initiative builds railways, ports, and highways around the world. Some fear it traps nations in debt and dependency. At home, China faces growing pressure. Youth unemployment is rising and censorship tightens. Nationalism is high, but so is unrest. The future remains uncertain. Will China become the world's dominant superpower, or will its internal contradictions bring it down? China's past is vast and violent. Its future could reshape the entire world. Like if you learned something, subscribe to see more. Share to support the channel.
Once upon a time in old Europe, people started dying mysteriously and in large numbers. And the explanation, according to many, was not disease or bad sanitation. It was vampires. Yes, vampires. Dead people rising from the grave, sneaking into homes and draining the life from their neighbors. This wasn't just folklore whispered around campfires. Entire villages believed it. So did nobles, priests, and even doctors. The symptoms they saw: pale skin, weight loss, coughing up blood. Today we call that tuberculosis. Back then it was textbook vampire behavior. So what did they do about it? They grabbed shovels, marched to the graveyards and started digging people up. Once they opened a coffin, the body was judged on appearance. If it wasn't decomposing fast enough, that meant it was undead. Sometimes the stomach was bloated or there was blood at the mouth. Instead of realizing that these were normal signs of decomposition, they assumed the corpse had been feeding. So they acted. They removed hearts, cut off heads, drove stakes through chests, shoved garlic in mouths, and occasionally they poured boiling wine over the body for good measure. Because clearly vampires hate hot drinks. In some cases they ground up the heart into ashes and made the family drink it. Because if Grandma's dying, the logical solution is to make her sip vampire dust. Medical science was still on vacation. One of the most famous cases happened in 1725 in Serbia. A man named Petar Blagojevich died, and soon after, 9 others followed. Locals said Petar had returned from the dead and attacked them. When they opened his grave, they claimed he looked too fresh and had blood on his lips. So they staked him and burned the body. The story spread across Europe, causing full-on vampire hysteria. Even the church stepped in, not because of the grave digging, but because vampires didn't fit the religious narrative. The church believed the dead should stay dead or wait peacefully for resurrection.